What do you see? A drawing of a hat or something completely different? Maybe we see the hat first because we've grown up. If you ask a child, they might say it's a boa constrictor eating an elephant, and when you hear that, it starts to make sense. Then you think about what else the drawing could be. Your imagination runs wild, but why doesn't that happen immediately? This drawing is from this book, a children's book from 1943 called The Little Prince. In the book, a little prince encounters a bunch of grown-ups from various planets, each one a little bit odd, disconnected from the present and worried about these so-called matters of consequence, like money, our job, or what people think of us. They are the 6 boring grown-ups we become. Which one are you? This here is the conceited man. The little prince meets him on a tiny planet, standing proudly dressed in fine clothing. During their conversation, he repeatedly asks the little prince to applaud him, because all he wants is admiration, to be told that he's the best dressed, richest, and smartest man on his planet. He also likes to think that his planet is the most magnificent in the universe, despite it actually being barren and unremarkable. Now, this is a guy who would absolutely love Instagram and TikTok. He probably goes on Tinder just for the ego boost. And it's kind of funny, especially when you see the similarity between him and every social media influencer ever. But the thing about this guy is that he's also the high achiever in school who thinks he can measure his self-worth in grades. He's the overachieving athlete that just wants to be recognized in their sport. And he's also the people-pleasing friend who means well but forgets to prioritize his own happiness. Because it's very easy to become the conceited man when we forget that true self-worth comes from within. It happens when we don't understand who we are and why we matter, so we depend on other people to tell us. This is the lamplighter, a man who was always busy. His job is to light a street lamp at sunset and to put it out by sunrise. The problem is that his planet makes a complete turn every minute, which means he's working every minute of every day. He spends his entire life working and has absolutely no time to do the one thing he loves: sleep. He could just stop and get the rest he needs, but he's faithful to his orders. He feels a sense of duty and obligation, which fuels him despite his hardship, which a lot of us might be able to relate to. Because we all have a deep need for a sense of purpose, but sometimes it just feels like a marathon without a finish line. Especially today when people expect you to be productive 24/7. When we sacrifice our own health and personal life just to make ends meet, the lamplighter is who we become. He's us as we grapple with work, school, a social life, a love life, and our own interests, and try not to succumb to burnout. This is the businessman. The little prince meets him in the middle of counting the stars. This is all he does. In his words, he has no time at all for idle dreaming in his life. And when asked what he does with the stars he endlessly counts, he simply says, "Nothing. I own them." This obviously confuses the little prince. After all, why own something you do nothing with? The businessman answers that owning them makes him rich. But what good does it do you to be rich, the little prince asks, only to be met with more confusion when he hears the businessman's answer. Being rich makes it possible for me to buy more stars. From here, the little prince's confusion starts to turn into fascination as he realizes he's met someone whose sole wish is to own things so he can own more things. The businessman is who we become when we obsess over career goals and financial ambitions. He is the hustle culture personified, a practitioner of the grind set. This type of person has become sort of a meme in recent years, because a lot of them come across as delusional, chasing the carrot on a stick that is financial success, while neglecting their friends and family and any semblance of a personality. But why exactly people become the businessman depends on the individual. They might be equating their own self-worth with material wealth, after having been indoctrinated that money equals success and value. But they could also be coming from a place of financial insecurity, having hit rock bottom before and sacrificing time for money now so they can prevent financial hardship in the future. This is the drunkard who the little prince meets on a desolate planet, with bottles scattered around him. All he does is drink, and when asked why, he says it's because he's ashamed that he drinks. He's stuck in a self-destructive loop. He doesn't like how his life has turned out, so he looks for some relief by numbing the pain with drinking. But then the drinking causes him to act shamefully, so he feels even worse. And the way he tries to solve that is by drinking even more. Now, this guy isn't just every alcoholic ever. He's anybody who's too afraid to face their problems head on. He's those of us who escape stress and emotional pain through unhealthy coping mechanisms like video games, social media, and drugs. He's also the people who are stuck in the past and so forget about the present. So when we refuse to forgive ourselves for past mistakes and distract ourselves from our emotions, the drunkard is who we become. This is the king who the little prince meets on a small planet. The king's planet is plain and empty, so even if he does look and dress like royalty, he's ultimately a king of no one. Despite this, he's adamant that he has absolute authority over everything and insists on being obeyed as a ruler. Over and over, he orders the little prince to do even the most trivial things. Even when the little prince does things out of his own volition, the king always insists that he was the one who ordered the little prince to do that. This guy is the power-tripping boss, the controlling parent, the manipulative partner. He's us when we lose our self-awareness. It compensates for our feelings of not being enough by seeking control and authority. The king is obsessed with asserting their own dominance over others. And there are kings everywhere. In politics, corporate, and even in the family, and we often think of them as jerks. But sometimes the king is just a mask that people put on. Because when you take somebody's independence away, they're going to want it back. And sometimes, like the king, they can go a bit overboard. This is the geographer. The little prince finds him on a planet with a modest office with maps and tools. He takes pride in his work, studying and documenting the territories of other planets. But when the little prince asks him about his own planet, he knows almost nothing about it. He couldn't tell you about a single ocean, town, river, or desert. And he admits that he's never even tried to explore it. When asked why, he says it's simply not his job. According to him, it's the explorers that go out and see the world. A geographer's job is simply to ask them questions and put things on the map. He could easily walk a few paces in any direction and see just how beautiful his planet is, but he chooses to stay in his office to conform to an imaginary title. The geographer is who we become when we start to fear change, when we cling too tight to our comfort zones. Safety and predictability can work for some people, especially if they had a stressful upbringing, but avoiding risk can have its downsides. Doing the same thing every day can lead to a boring life where the days just sort of blend together, and before you know it, life has passed you by. These grown-ups all have a glaring flaw that we can learn from. The conceited man teaches us that seeking constant validation can be very unfulfilling and that true self-worth comes from within. The lamplighter reminds us that while it's good to believe in a cause and work towards it, we also need to rest. The businessman teaches us that while accumulating wealth isn't necessarily a bad thing, we also need room for idle dreaming, so we can know what to use our wealth on to make us happy. The drunkard shows the importance of facing our emotions instead of escaping them through unhealthy coping mechanisms. And the king teaches us that leadership isn't about asserting dominance, it's about empowering others towards a common goal through respect and understanding. But it needs to be said that these grown-ups have been through a lot. Each of them has a reason for why they become the person they are. They probably all started out as curious, imaginative little princes, but life does have a way of ruining that. Somewhere along the way, we start to think about more important things, and our imagination has to take a back seat. So if you saw a drawing of a hat, that's completely okay. Adulthood is really hard, and when you do seek help, there's too many conflicting ideas to choose from while you struggle to keep things from falling apart. So we start seeing hats instead of boa constrictors eating elephants. Doesn't mean we're boring, it's just that we've learned to be practical and realistic. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which boring grown-up you've become, because the little prince that was in all of us is still there. We all just have to pay a bit more attention to him, so he can remind us about what makes us happy. Because the only way that life becomes this marathon of monotony is if we cling too hard to the things that we think are matters of consequence. Hey, if you like that, please like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time.